Stability isn't just a choice, it's a cage. But the most dangerous cage has no bars. It's the one you walked into willingly. Every month, you aren't being robbed. You're handing over your life, piece by piece, and calling it security. Everyone wants a way out. Most pray for luck, but very few ever stop to ask why they're holding the key and refusing to turn it. You call it a career, a salary, a future. But look closer. If no one is forcing you to stay, then who taught you to love the bars? Before we talk about the history of kings or the weight of gold, we have to talk about the biology of surrender. Your brain wasn't designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to keep you alive. And in the modern world, survival has a rhythm. It is called a paycheck. This is the ultimate form of behavioral conditioning. You aren't being forced to stay, you are being trained to crave the reward. The human mind is hardwired for the path of least resistance. Evolution favored the ancestor who stayed in the cave and avoided the unknown. To your subconscious, growth is a threat, and uncertainty is a predator. This is why you feel that phantom weight in your chest when you think about leaving the familiar, even if the familiar is killing you. Your biology is programmed to prioritize safety over sovereignty. It views a steady, predictable income as the modern equivalent of a secure shelter. You aren't lazy. You are simply optimized for a world that no longer exists. The system doesn't need to chain your hands when it can hack your neurochemistry. We call this stability. We call it a career. But to the architects of power, it is simply predictability. A man who knows exactly when his next meal is coming is a man who can be managed. He becomes reliable. He becomes obedient. He stops looking for the exit because he has become addicted to the comfort of the cage. He is not locked in by iron bars, but by the terror of what happens if the reward stops arriving on time. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He didn't learn about power from philosophy or ivory towers. He learned it from the cold streets of Florence and the blood-stained courts of Italy. He watched how fear was used to create order and how rewards were used to buy silence. He realized that true power doesn't come from the sword. It comes from understanding the internal gears of the human soul gears that grind on the desperate need for security. Machiavelli observed that if you can control a man's sense of safety, you don't just own his labor, you own his mind. What follows is how that control is perfected. Rule 1. Money is not a creator. It is a magnifier. It takes the quiet greed, the hidden insecurities, or the suppressed arrogance already living inside a person and gives it a megaphone. But there is a deeper layer that most never see. The system doesn't just watch this reveal, it engineers it. Wealth is distributed as a reward for compliance and withheld as a punishment for friction. Over time, the human spirit is filed down, smoothed out, and reshaped to fit the mold of the distributor. Most believe they are choosing their path, but they are simply following a trail of breadcrumbs. Their very identity is not born of choice, but of behavioral conditioning. They don't realize that by the time they have the money, they no longer have the soul that wanted to use it for freedom. This leads to the second rule. Visibility is a liability. In a world obsessed with the flex, the act of showing what you have is often mistaken for strength. It is the opposite. To Machiavelli, wealth displayed is a target painted. It tells your enemies exactly where to strike and exactly what it will cost to buy your loyalty. But more importantly, the need to display wealth reveals a hollow core. It is a loud confession that you still require the validation of the crowd to feel the weight of your own coin. If you need them to see it, to believe it, then they, not you, are the ones in control of its value. The truly powerful operate in the shadows of their own influence. They don't need the world to witness their success because they are busy controlling the environment in which that success exists. They understand that once you show your hand, you lose the advantage. And once the advantage is gone, you find yourself back in the cage. But this time, the bars are invisible. They feel like luxury. We often mistake a lack of friction for a presence of freedom, but there is a massive difference between being free and being comfortable. Freedom is the power to walk away. Comfort is merely the price paid to keep you from walking. You see, the system doesn't need to chain your hands if it can make your bed soft enough. Look back at the great dynasties of the East. History is filled with stories of the loyal subjects, the most brilliant, disciplined, and capable men of their time. They were the architects of empires, the keepers of the treasury, and the shield of the throne. They were the best the system had to offer. Yet, when those dynasties inevitably crumbled, these were the men who lost everything the fastest. It wasn't because they were weak. It was because they had spent their entire lives building something they didn't own. They possessed immense power within the system, but zero power outside of it. When the throne fell, they didn't just lose their titles, they lost their reality. They were masters of a house where they were ultimately just guests. The modern world has replaced dynasties with corporations, but the mechanics remain identical. The system still rewards the loyal subject, the employee who stays late, the one who carries the culture, the one who sacrifices their health for the brand. You've seen them, the hard-working, the reliable, the indispensable. But in the cold logic of power, reliability is not a virtue, it's a vulnerability. The more reliable you are, the more predictable you become. And the more predictable you are, the easier you are to manage. The system doesn't want you to be free. It wants you to be so integrated that the idea of leaving becomes a source of terror. The most loyal are often the last to realize that their loyalty is not a mutual pact, it is a one-way donation. In a boardroom, your decade of service is not an asset, it is a cost, and costs are meant to be cut. You have been trained to call this a career. You have been taught to see your exhaustion as a badge of honor. But if you are building an empire that doesn't have your name on the door, you aren't an architect, you are a brick. Ask yourself right now, look at your bank account, your skills, and your reputation. If the company you work for disappeared tomorrow, if that entire structure vanished into thin air tonight, what would you have left that belongs only to you? If the answer is nothing, then you aren't free. You're just a well-fed prisoner who hasn't noticed the gates are locked from the outside. Money is often described as a medium of exchange, but in the reality of power, money is a probe. It is a filter used to measure the depth of your resolve and the price of your pride. We are taught to look at how we spend money, but we are rarely taught to look at how we are being tested by it. Every financial interaction is a silent question. When a superior offers you a raise in exchange for total availability, they are not recognizing your value. They are calculating the cost of your soul. They are testing to see if you are willing to trade your autonomy for a slightly more comfortable cage. When a partner or a client pays you late, they are observing your reaction. They want to know if you will stand on the boundary of the agreement, or if you will wait quietly in the shadows of their convenience. Machiavelli understood that power always flows toward the person who is the least dependent on the current transaction. If you need the check more than they need the service, you are not a partner, you are a subordinate. Money reveals the hierarchy of who can afford to wait and who cannot. Yet, for most, the problem isn't the test, it's the belief that they have no cards to play. This brings us to the first move for those who have nothing. Most people believe that, without capital, without connections, or without a head start, they are invisible in the game. They wait for a door to open, not realizing that the door is locked from the inside. If you have no gold to offer, you must offer the one thing the system cannot easily replicate: individual scarcity. Leverage is not always built with wealth. It is built with specialized competence that creates a single point of failure for others. If the machine cannot run without your specific input, you own a piece of the machine, regardless of whose name is on the deed. This is the leverage of the indispensable outlier. While others are trying to be the most hardworking brick in the wall, the strategist becomes the cornerstone. They master the skills that are difficult to learn, unpleasant to perform, or dangerous to ignore. They don't ask for a seat at the table, they become the reason the table exists. Once you realize that your lack of money is simply a lack of leverage, the game changes. You stop looking for a salary and start looking for a dependency to occupy. You move from a position of needing to be chosen to a position where you are the only choice. But as you begin to climb out of the trap, you must realize that you are entering a much darker arena. What follows is the game that nobody tells you you're already playing. The most uncomfortable truth isn't just that you are being controlled, it's that you have become a willing participant in controlling others. You are not just the prisoner, you are also, occasionally, the guard. Consider Rule 6, the trap of social excellence. You are encouraged to chase standards, the prestigious title, the perfect home, the curated life. You think you're winning a race, but Machiavelli would tell you that the architects of that race aren't looking for a victor, they are looking for the most efficient runner. They don't want to elevate you to the top, they want to keep you right in the center, running at a pace that keeps the machinery humming. To them, your ambition is just fuel. The moment you cross the finish line, they simply move the tape further back. This leads to Rule 7, the dosage of comfort. We are taught that comfort is a reward for hard work. It isn't. It's a leash. The system has no interest in your happiness. Happy people are independent, and independent people are impossible to manage. Instead, the system seeks to keep you in a state of calculated misery. You are kept just comfortable enough to avoid the risk of revolt, but just anxious enough to never question the hand that feeds you. It is a life of suspended animation, where your fatigue is a design feature, not a flaw. You are being traded a sense of safety for the reality of your time, and you've been trained to call that a fair deal. Then there is Rule 8, the measurement of the wealthy. We believe we admire the successful. In reality, we audit them. When a man rises, he isn't surrounded by friends. He is surrounded by surveyors. They aren't celebrating his growth, they are measuring his fall. His inner circle isn't a support system, it's a board of directors calculating his net worth as a human being. This is the dark game you are already playing, even with the people you call your own. You are measuring their utility while they measure yours. What comes next is the price of trying to leave the table entirely. Rule 9 is the highest form of sovereignty. It is captured in a single, devastating sentence. I can walk away, and you can't. In any negotiation, in any relationship, the person who needs the other person less is the one who holds the invisible leash. True independence is not about how much gold is in the vault, it is about how little you are willing to suffer to keep it. Most people spend their lives expanding their needs, and in doing so, they expand their chains. They become attached to the status, the security, and the expectations of others. But the strategist understands that every attachment is a point of failure. Yet, there is a cost to this sovereignty that no one wants to mention. It is the cost of structured loneliness. When a man reaches the point where he needs nothing from anyone, he essentially removes himself from the human contract. Human connection is built on mutual need, on the shared vulnerability of being incomplete. When you become complete within yourself, you stop being a friend, and you start being a monument. You are admired, yes. You are feared, certainly. But you are never truly known. You spend your life managing distances, ensuring that no one gets close enough to see the cracks, and no one stays far enough to forget your shadow. You become a person who can walk away from everyone, which means, eventually, everyone stops trying to make you stay. Think of Machiavelli himself. He wrote the greatest manual on power while living in total exile. He understood the mechanics of the throne better than the kings who sat upon it, yet he died essentially alone, belonging to no court and no country. He was the architect of a world he could no longer live in. He saw the truth, but the truth made him a stranger to the very people he sought to guide. He had the power of the observer, but he lost the warmth of the participant. This is the twist that most modern gurus forget. You can build a fortress so strong that no enemy can breach it, but in the process, you may realize that no one can visit it either. The peak is quiet because no one else can breathe the air at that height. So, as you climb, as you refine your ability to walk away from everything that chains you, ask the one question that never makes it into the financial reports. When the game is finally won and the cage is finally gone, will there be a human being left to enjoy the view, or will there just be a very efficient machine sitting in an empty room? In the ancient world, power was the flow of grain and water. Today, the flow has changed. Rule 10. If you control the flow, you control the behavior. Most people believe this only applies to capital, to the numbers in a bank account. But in the era of the infinite scroll, the most lethal flow is attention. Whoever controls where people look controls what they want. You don't need to coerce a man into action if you can curate his reality. By managing the light, you ensure that only one path appears viable. Power, in its most refined form, isn't about owning the destination, it's about owning the map. Yet, there is a limit to this control that most so-called experts are too afraid to mention. Rule 11. Know when silence becomes your enemy. We are often told to remain a total mystery, to never teach the system to those beneath us. The logic is simple. If they don't know how the machine works, they can never replace the operator. But this is the trap of the amateur. Machiavelli warned that a prince who is too distant, too opaque, eventually becomes a target of pure paranoia. Absolute silence doesn't breed loyalty. It breeds rebellion. When people are kept in total darkness for too long, they don't submit. They react with fire. They realize their dependency is a cage, and their only way out is to destroy the person holding the key. Dependency is a fragile state, and it is never a substitute for true alignment. This is the mistake the original rules make. They assume that being mysterious is the same as being powerful. The professional strategist understands the strategic reveal. The goal isn't to hide everything, but to teach the system in calculated doses. You provide just enough clarity to make them effective, but never enough to make you obsolete. You give them the tools to work the field, but you keep the knowledge of the seasons to yourself. It is a more dangerous, more sophisticated game. By letting them see a version of the truth, you satisfy their hunger for clarity while maintaining your position at the center. Silence is a weapon, but transparency is the shield that keeps the weapon from being turned against you. What comes next is the final movement, how to give, so that you never truly lose. We often mistake generosity for a lack of strategy, but in the architecture of human relationships, every gift is a brick in a foundation of obligation. Rule 12. Give with invisible strings. Machiavelli observed that the most effective way to secure loyalty isn't through force, but through the quiet accumulation of debts. However, there is a boundary that the amateur often crosses. The difference between relationship architecture and manipulation lies in the intent. A mature strategist knows that turning someone into a hostage only breeds a hidden, lethal resentment. True power is found in creating a debt of gratitude that the other person wants to repay. You provide value so deep that their own logic makes your success a necessity for their own. You aren't enslaving them. You are making yourself indispensable to their reality. This leads to the final state. Rule 13. Build a life where money is present but never loud. You have seen the loudest men in the room, those who make wealth their only identity. They speak of it constantly because, without it, they are invisible. But for the truly powerful, money is like the air in the room, vital, ever-present, but completely silent. They have moved beyond the need for proof. They no longer serve the currency serves the background of their lives. But as we reach the end of these rules, realize the truth that Machiavelli whispered from his exile. You aren't actually building a portfolio. You aren't building a pile of gold that can be taxed, seized, or inflated away. What you are really building is a version of yourself that is fundamentally unbuyable. You are crafting a mind that understands the mechanics of the cage so well that the bars no longer exist. You are becoming a person that no system, no corporation, and no structure can ever own again. Because the ultimate wealth isn't what you have, it's who you become when the world realizes it has nothing left to offer you. The rules are now yours to carry. But understand this: knowing the mechanism of the trap does not make you free. It only makes you aware of the bars. Machiavelli wrote for the few who were willing to see the world as it is, not as they wish it to be. Most will walk away from this moment and return to the safety of their conditioning. They will trade their potential for a steady reward and call it wisdom. But the truth doesn't offer comfort. It only offers a mirror. Look at the life you are leading and the future you are funding. There is only one distinction left to make before the screen goes dark. Ask yourself right now, are you building something, or are you being built into something?